I would like to introduce all of you to our keynote speaker of today, a person with a lot of experience in virtual reality, Stéphane Grade. He got his PhD in psychological sciences at University de Louvain in 2016 on, if I'm correct, space recognition and virtual reality, which is totally not my field, but I think Stéphane can explain us the best, and he will give us a very interesting look in the use of virtual reality and the development of virtual reality in diverse educational purposes. Stéphane, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for the nice introduction. So, yeah. So I'll just open. Okay, perfect. So, without any surprise, I'm going to talk to you about virtual reality, but more specifically the use of VR in the field of education training. Well, my field of expertise is more medical training, but there is a lot of things that can be reused or rethinked around virtual reality. So thanks a lot, Olivier, for the invitation, and I hope try to awaken you to the joys of VR today. So as Olivier said, I did my PhD in psychological science, and so indeed I studied space perception and how your brain kind of construct a perception of space. And I was also interested in embodiment theory, so the idea that you incarnate your body and how that sense of body ownership is kind of linked to space perception. For example, when you remember memories when you were children, that you were so little, the world seemed bigger, and then you go back to the same place years after, then everything seems so tiny, because in fact your body is kind of your anchor in space perception, in the sense of delimiting per personal space and so on. But I won't speak about that. We developed a VR lab to try to change the body dimension and measure how it influences space. And that's how I got my hands into VR and Unity development. And then in 2008, I started a new project called EPAMU, which has the aim to create a training tool for ambulance responders. And it was with the ambulance school of Province de Liège, the CECOTEPE, and the HEPL. And more recently, we started a spin-off project with the ambition to create a company specialized in VR development and deployment, and creating diverse type of experience for training and healthcare. And so the menu today, so I'll give a small introduction about VR. We'll try to see what are the different types of VR headsets and tools. And then we'll focus on serious gaming and how it can evolve to immersive learning thanks to virtual reality. And then I'll show some example depending on the time remaining. And I'll finish by just presenting a case study, so how, for our project, how we proceed and how we kind of define what needed to be developed. So to start with, VR is not that new, because in 1957, Morton Eilig actually created maybe the first immersive experience. And so what he did, he created a camera which was binocular, so he just put two cameras next to each other, allowing each eye to have a different image and to create a stereoscopic effect, and so 3D. But he did not stop there, because he also had 3D sound, he had smell diffuser, he had a vibrating chair. And so he really wanted to tackle all senses and really immerse you in his Sensorama machine. And he's considered as one of the father of VR, and the other father is Ivan Sutherland. In '68, he created kind of the first augmented reality system. So the person had glasses onto which were projected 3D image, but that were adapted to the movement of the head of the person. And the device was so heavy that it had to be held by a big hook, otherwise the neck of the participant could be a bit damaged. And so this kind of introduced the idea that there is kind of a continuum between real environment and virtual environment. So on the right you have a real environment, it's in Louvain-la-Neuve. And then on the very right, your right, my left, is is a fully immersed person with her own virtual avatar within a virtual environment. And in between, you have augmented reality. So here's an example, quite an old one of Google Glass. So wearing glasses with added virtual elements. And another concept called augmented virtual reality, which is a bit more special in the sense that you augment your virtual space with real elements. So for example, you have a virtual coffee machine and you come with a pack of coffee, a real one, under the nose of the participant. So the smell is a real smell, the coffee is real, but it kind of augment the virtual coffee machine with a real smell. So, okay. And back in the days, it was encompassed under the umbrella term called mixed reality. But then after, people say, no, mixed reality is somewhere in between virtual and augmented reality. And the umbrella term should be called extended reality. So when you have XR, it means all immersive technologies continue. And further away, we get into the matrix some days. So augmented reality, you all have an augmented reality device in your pockets. I mean, some may recognize some of the two. If you want to see what the new furniture you buy in IKEA will look in your house, you can use your tablet or smartphone to kind of project a virtual sofa in your living room. I really recommend Google Expedition. It's a free app allowing you to put dinosaurs or the experiments of Leonardo da Vinci inside your rooms, and it's for free. So it's kind of simple AR. More complex device like the HoloLens of Microsoft, which is kind of the most known AR device. Actually, they project 3D images on glasses, and so you still see the real world, but we add some cool layer. And Facebook obviously wants to do some augmented reality, so the project ARIA will come quite soon. It's actually smart glasses, which will allow you to warn you, don't walk on the street because the fire is red, so you should wait, and also help you choosing your CDs. It will kind of scan the environment and give you some information. Oh, this CD is on your wish list. Maybe you should get it. So this is going to arrive, and Apple actually also joined the race recently. So those glasses will come out in about a year or a bit more. And it will allow you, if your car is not so pretty, you can put a virtual layer on top of it and have a very nice car. So on the other side, VR has been around for a bit. Nintendo tried to do some a test with Mario Tennis here, but it was quite difficult for participants because the image was in black and red, and actually you had to be sitting like this, so it was not the most convenient. And when I started my PhD, I did a small review, and for example, this headset was around 30,000 euro. But then everything's changed when Oculus did their Kickstarter, and it was kind of a big boom because they proposed their development kit for 300 euro. So they divided by almost 100 the price of those headsets. And from there, but we had a whole bunch of headsets that came in. So the Oculus is quite famous, PlayStation VR, the whole Windows headset, the HTC Vive, the Valve Index or the Pico, which are Chinese. And funny thing, Facebook bought Oculus 5 years ago, and we were like, oh my God, what's going on? But actually it gave also a good boost to the technology. And what's funny is the Chinese headset just have been bought by TikTok, so story is repeating itself. But Oculus tried to develop better headsets. So if you want, before you had to have external sensors, and so it was called outside-in tracking. But now they created inside-out tracking, so they put the sensor on the headset, equipped with camera that kind of are auto-tracked 360 degrees. And other headsets came along, and then Oculus came with the Quest 2. I'm not a commercial for Facebook, but those headsets are quite good. And if you want, I'll share my slide after. Here they kind of retrace the evolution of the development. So first we had no controllers, then we started to have hands, then we started to have autonomous headsets, so no need of computer. And they say it's 5 years, but in fact it's more 10 years, because before they bought Oculus, well, 5 years has been gone along the way. And as I said, what is very important is the ability to see your hands. So different devices allow really to get your hands into VR. And so this more simple is the controllers that kind of map a hands onto it. But more recent have hand tracking, so no need of controllers. You can see virtual hands that move the same way as your real hands. So earlier I talked about mixed reality and augmented virtuality, and so here's quite two nice examples. So mixed reality can be seen as a way to mix a real person that is filmed in a green box with a virtual environment, so allowing to really see from a third-person perspective how the person is moving in the virtual space. And for augmented virtuality, I think this is even a better example, the coffee machine, in the sense that the person is walking on a plank on top of a huge building, but physically there is a real plank under the feet, and so the virtual plank and the real plank kind of match, and it really adds a huge, because the person can feel that there is this plank, but he sees a huge void under it, and so it's really striking, even without the plank, but adding the plank really adds to the experience of the fear of height and so on. And so another example, another side technology is called the 360 videos. And so some say this is virtuality, some say no, it's augmented virtuality. Well, it's just a terminology issue, but those videos are quite useful to really capture a 360 video of your environment, your surrounding, allowing to create images that really capture. So in fact, it's 360 videos are 360 videos. It's kind of a capture of the reality, but it's true that you can visualize them with virtual reality headset, and you can augment it by adding some layers, some explanations on those videos. So there is some laws and rules to follow in VR to ensure safety, but also your balance and the risk of cyber sickness, which is some form of nausea. So you have the seasickness, but you also have the cyber sickness. And some cautions also needs to be made towards children and elderly people. So first things first, the real world still exists when you are in VR, and so what they've developed is those kind of cage, so virtual safe space. And if you get out of your virtual cage, we cannot make sure that you will be safe. And in the sense that you try to make some. So this is some example of what happens when you don't respect this safe space, and you can see some people well, here. So be careful with your users, with the demonstration you make, and also be careful if you enter the safe space of someone, because he might punch you without noticing you. So this is kind of the important thing. And you can find thousands of videos like this within the internet. So yeah, I'll just go back to my PowerPoint. And so the real world still exists. Okay. Yes, of course. So, in fact, as soon as you hit the floor, I think, and that's the funny thing, is sometimes your brain, in fact, represents two spaces at the same time. And when you hit the floor, even though you're still virtually falling, then you have this physical touch with the floor. So I think it dominates the. But I mean, if you, some people, for example, jump from the plank and they see the world going, but some of them might just be okay, but some of them will fall down. So it's really important to go progressively to try to accompany the person in the experience. But I mean, since the use is quite recent, there's also some things we don't know. So it's quite a good question. But if you die in VR, you don't die in real life. But there is some scary stuff, like Alien, or you can be careful if you have a fragile heart. Okay, another important thing is the idea of degrees of freedom. So a lot of people talk to 3 DOF or 6 DOF. And in fact, to start with, the first headset or the Google Cardboard that was okay but not so good, in fact, they stuck you in only 3 degrees of freedom, so you can only rotate, but you cannot do this, or you cannot move forward, and so on, because actually the tracking is not sufficient. And same goes for 360 videos. The camera was only in one place, and so you cannot move beyond where the camera was taking those 360 videos. But then the device kind of evolved, adding external trackers that are no internal whatsoever, allowing really a better freedom of motion, and really reducing a lot the possibility of nausea or of cyber sickness. Who experienced VR and had some nausea here in the floor? And so was it only possible to rotate, or were you able to move around? You were able to move. And was it a well-optimized experience, or was it a bit laggy? So, in fact, in the population, there is some diversity in the resistance. So you need to be careful also with the time you put people in those experiments. And also, you need to be sure that the latency is correct. Because if you move your head like this, but the image doesn't follow, then your brain's going to be not so happy. And so here's quite another nice example showing the differences. And so when you are in 6 degrees of freedom, you can get close to object. But when you are in 3 degrees of freedom, you get close, and in fact the object moves further away, which is not the ideal. And so the reason of this is the vestibular system that calculate your rotations in space, your position in space, also take into account the gravity. And it's really important for the brain that your visual system and your vestibular system are in match. There is some congruence, some coherence between the 2 signals. Otherwise, the brain say, I never make calculation error, I'm perfect, I'm the brain, so I must have been poisoned, that's the only explanation. And sometimes if you really stay too long in a wrong situation, then what happens can happen. And so as soon as you feel discomfort, you need to stop the experiment, the experience, and because trying to force into the experience might really make some symptoms that can last half an hour or even an hour. Early days, some people say, for the whole afternoon I was sick, but so take it easy. And there's some solutions, in fact, to really prevent for those seasickness. So in fact, if you have if you're in a virtual roller coaster that moves all around, but you are on a real chair that doesn't move, then it can really also create some discomfort. And here are some of the possible solutions. So something that was invented is teleportation. So you aim a place, screen goes black and screen goes up, and you've been teleported into the other area. So you don't have so much visual motion. Other people, they do the tunneling effect. So they kind of limit only the foveal vision, and they get rid of the peripheral vision, because it's the motion in peripheral vision that is mostly causing the discomfort. Or they create a VR experience that doesn't move. In fact, the world comes to the person, and the person can just stay. And an example is Beat Saber, so some of you might know. In fact, the things are coming towards the user, and the user doesn't need to navigate or to move around. Or if you have a lot of money, you can try to track very large space and go from room scale to free roaming. So when we say about room scale is when we define an area of 2 by 2, 5 by 5 meter, when you can freely move around. And when you're in a free roaming situation and you have a super backpack with a computer in it, and you are plugged, and there is a large tracking area with different cameras, and then you can walk around in even 200 meters square or more. So virtual reality actually has made some boom in the past 5-10 years, and it's been used in a lot of different situations, in healthcare, in travel agency that bring you to the Taj Mahal or to New Zealand with 360 videos. A lot has been used in education, for the training of military and so on. And so we'll go together towards the following of the presentation and see how some use case explore VR and serious gaming. So serious gaming, you might recognize this. This is actual gaming. But what is interesting is in education science, we can kind of reuse some mechanics of video games. Like, for example, here it's resource management. What should I invest my resource in? What should I do first, and so on. These mechanics can be reused in education, in the creation of a training tool. And so some of you might recognize those early serious games, so called Adibou, who was teaching you mathematics or French or other languages, depending. There's loads of simulators also that if you like to drive trucks for 4 hours on a motorway, then those exist, and also some cooking simulator that apparently can be quite fun. And even though the first aim is really to mix gaming and teaching or simulating a real activity. And obviously others exist also in medical simulation. So some call it game-based learning, some also call it edutainment, but it's really this combination between pedagogical approach and interactive entertainment to create scenarios, to create environments that really motivate and help the acquisition of new knowledge or new skills. And either you create a video game or a serious game that is dedicated to some specific objective, but you can also recycle or reuse existing thing and kind of turn around their use. I know some teacher in language that use a Zelda game or underwater simulation game just to train the vocabulary and say, okay, how would you describe that building? How would you describe that animal using the other language? And so it also can really provide some motivation in the way. And if one slide should be remembered today, it's probably this one. It's quite an old paper where they try to put forward the 6 facets of serious game design and really highlighting the need of collaboration between the pedagogical expertise and the game design expertise. And in fact, framing the idea that it's not a job you do on your own. It's better if you have a team that really can bring each their skills. And so, for example, on the pedagogical side, well, what's first thing first is really define your objective. What do you want to achieve? What are your learning outcomes that you are targeting with your application? Also, the domain simulation. And so, obviously, you need some pedagogical expertise, but sometimes you need some expertise of the domain. I mean, if you're not a doctor, if you're not a technician in laboratory, you need some people that actually know the domain and can really feed you with their expertise. And also useful is defining the condition of use. So who are your end users? Who are you targeting with your application? In which context should it be done? Are they going to use them on their own or in total autonomy, or is it going to be some kind of blended learning where you accompany them, but they also have some session on their own? Or is it going to be used in a classroom and projecting the experience, and everyone goes in the simulation turn by turn? So this, all the things that needs to be defined, and probably starting with the pedagogical side is useful in the sense that it really structures the development following. And on the game design side, you can even separate this expertise because, for example, for the decorum, the decoration, the audio, the visual elements, you need infographics, 3D artists or audio designers that are going to be feeding with the basic elements. And then you need a programmer that say, okay, if I press this, this is going to happen. If I do that, this is how it's going to happen. And the last part is problem and progression, and that's where everything kind of need to connect. It's how you created a scenario, how you created your procedure. First, they're going to start with that, then they're going to do that. Should we do a tutorial, or should we do some guidance online where step by step they are guided? Do we have a easy mode and a hard mode, so with guidance, without guidance? And so putting all that on paper really facilitate the development afterwards. So probably some of you know this cone of learning proposed by Edgar Dale, which in fact said that when you learn, it's always better to be active in your learning than to be passive, because according to him, when we are just reading, we might remember 10 to 20% of what we read, although it might depend of the different person. Some people are very verbal receivers, or others have strong visual receivers. But when we hear something, when we watch a video, it each time increase the retainment of the content that is deployed. But when you give a talk, when you do a simulation, when you do even a theater play, then you are really active in your learning. If you do the real thing, that's probably the best way to learn a new skill. And it's really what brought the idea that active learning is probably stronger, leaves stronger memories than passive learning. And that's probably where serious gaming and VR-assisted immersive learning can really have a added value, in the sense that you really put them in a space with their different senses being stimulated. They move around, so they also have a body in the simulation, so they really embody also their avatar and the experience. So I really liked this delimitation of different types of immersive learning that was proposed by SomewhereL, which is a company based in the UK, specialized in soft skill learning. And they said there is kind of three big families. So first one is really training the skills, training procedures, training the algorithm, in which order should the action take place. Second one is knowledge-based. It's, in fact, now we can deploy knowledge in the space around us, allowing people to navigate from planet to planet. So they kind of realize the distance, and they can display some kind of added information. And last one is really the soft skill training, say how you interact with others, so the intrapersonal and interpersonal skills, like leadership, like communication, time management, and so on. And they argue that we will train those skills by interacting with virtual avatars, with super powerful artificial intelligence being. Well, I'm not so sure that we can train social skills by talking with virtual humans, so this is debatable. But what is sure is the possibility to do multi-user experience with several people in the simulation can really then bring a social value in your learning. And so I have some examples. I probably won't show everything in the sense that otherwise I'll be out of time. But this is a company that states that if it's big, expensive, or dangerous, then VR can be a very good solution. So in the case of FunForLab, the problem that seemed to be identified is the automata are quite expensive. It's expensive machines. But then if you create a digital version of them, then you can deploy it almost infinitively. And okay, the modelization has a cost, but once it's created, it can be used as a digital twin of the machines you want to work on. If something is dangerous, then in VR it might explode in your face, but you don't die in real life if you die in VR. And so I tried to find some other examples that might be more linked to what the project here aims. And so here was a project that's 2 years old, I think, was developed in ULB by a company that is now bankrupt, so I don't know exactly what became of this tool, but the idea was really to create an environment with the pipetter and to kind of train different steps. So here they had to extract a certain quantity and relocate it in another container and so on. And that's sometimes what is difficult is in VR, almost everything is possible. And so where do you stop, or what do you actually want to do? But the good thing is you can really, as you see here, there is some explanation on a board in front of the people. You can also add some audios. You can add, like here, the green thing indicating it needs to be put there, and so on. And I have another video in the same vein, where they don't show the whole experience, but here they wanted to train the learners about the hygiene procedures. So when you come in, what should you do? And so here was really getting the right equipment, putting your gloves on. So I think here, and so as you can see, he's teleporting. And so these kind of things, here they had to equip some shoe covers and so on. And so, as I was saying, here is really the first family is you train some skills, some procedures to be respected. And so there's quite a lot of examples like that. If you want to check out more, I'll share the slides so you can have a look. I will pause, otherwise the sound goes on. And so this is kind of the first family saying the skills base. Now, on knowledge base, there is quite a lot of other experience, and I really like this one because first it's a free app available for 3 years now, which allow you to go within the human body. And so, yep, let me just. So you can watch the organs from outside, from inside. You can put different layers. In the sense, you can see the electrical impulse, you can see the blood flows. This is from inside the brain. You can slice the different organs differently, and so it's quite an interesting application. And as they said, it's kind of putting into space knowledge, being able to visualize the inside of the lungs with the alveoli and so on. So I thought it was worth showing. And I found also some others. What's going on? Some other example that might. Okay, I'm gonna have to relaunch the slides. Happens once in a while. Even during my PhD defense, I had to relaunch PowerPoint, so I'm quite used to this. And actually, I tried to find some other examples, and so I won't show the whole videos, but InCell is an app where you go inside the cell, allowing you to see the nucleus, the mitochondria, and so on. Nadome is an app which allows you to display molecules and atoms, and for example, joining the different like oxygen and hydrogen, and then you have the water molecules. And the last one is it's called Mel Chemistry, and so you enter and you see the Mendeleev table, and so it also gives you some examples. So we'll just show a couple. And what is very interesting with Nanome,
aren't always in the same place, have the same background.
I'll show the other one. Coming right up.
Okay, the molecule
And
that
as
we're
I
talking
said,
about today
in fact,
is
this application also allows several people to be in the same room. And so each avatar is a different person. Either they're at the same physical space or they are each at home and they kind of teleport together. And it's the possibility to kind of visualize the structure of different molecules. And so you can even have the teacher present with a small classroom, and the teacher explains different kind of stuff. And so Nanome is a free application as well. And I think that's a good example of really the possibilities of VR and what it can offer in terms of skill learning, but also more theoretical learning that sometimes can be difficult to grasp by the students. And I found another one. Yes, that's the. so for the male VR, that's strange. Okay, well, I'll let you explore by yourself. It's probably the best advice I can give you is go on YouTube, check, just put VR or 360 videos, can be super easily found on YouTube, giving you some examples. And so, as I said, third family is really the soft skill, the behavior altering, whether you interact with real people or virtual people. But I like this example called body swap, where in fact you do a job interview and you embody an avatar, and then at the end of the interview you need to do the role play, the simulation, and at the end they kind of swap the two bodies, and so you see yourself from the third person perspective, and it gives you some metrics, like they also analyze the tone of your voice, like the prosody you have, and so on. And it's quite interesting, but some people could say, yeah, but what about we film you and then you watch the videos of yourself speaking as a debriefing? Then it's always interesting to ask yourself the question, do VR really add an added value, or actually we could use something in the real world that would do the trick? And so here there's some Swiss researcher working on public speaking, so there's some apps allowing to speak in front of virtual audience, and either they all look at you, they all smile, or you press a button, they all start to do a bad face. So how can you handle that? And you can even practice firing someone in VR. So it's Tailspin is a US company, and they made a huge buzz by saying, no, you can practice firing, and so you have to explain that old man that he's not working well, and so he gets angry, obviously, and how do you react in front of that? There's also quite a lot of social VR applications that are free and allow you to meet in space. I really like Outspace VR, that's a more serious one, where they held conferences for VR researchers and so on. And so you can attend those virtual conferences. And VR chat is a bit more savage, I would say. So it goes in all over the place. You can have any avatar you want. So you can walk around as Spider-Man or as a SpongeBob or Homer Simpson as you wish. But it's really the idea of, and during the COVID, we used those tools with some of our students and colleagues to meet every Friday afternoon and to get together and try to maintain a bond and play around or whatsoever. But we also had some serious meeting though. And actually in 2020, Laval Virtual is probably the biggest VR conference in Europe. And in 3 months, they recreated the whole environment. So it was on an island with different auditoriums, and you could meet people and attend to conference, because actually that was the only possibility. Okay, so that was a bit some of the examples there is, and so I'll finish by presenting our project that actually started some years ago, and my role in the project was really to create a bridge between the ambulance school and the informatics development school, to create a bridge between virtual reality and medical simulation. And what is medical simulation in this context? It looks like this, so it's a multidisciplinary training with police, firefighters, and medics. And you first need to do a huge doodle to make sure everything is available on the same date. Then you need to have actors, makeup artists that are gonna wound the actors and so on. And it takes a lot of resource, both in terms of human or of budget. You need to find a large space that can host these events. And so the challenge we had is that, can you do that in VR? And so we did not do something as complete and complex, but we really focused on the ambulance training. And as I said, first thing first was really to define the learning outcomes. And so first thing, we wanted our learners to grasp and work and have a drill on this decision algorithm. It's called medical triage, and depending on the vitals evaluation, you make some triage about the urgency of each victim. And so yellow, if she can walk, well, it's yellow, it's not so urgent. If the person is unconscious or has some circulation issue, it's red. And the black is, unfortunately, it's too late. You're gonna kind of may try to save someone and maybe lose 10 other people that could be that are savable. Another thing we wanted to do is help learners to select the right gesture for the right type of wounds. We also try to kind of reproduce, so this is what is given in the courses, and saying the different parameters. So medics cannot go in the red parameter, and so in our VR environment we try to kind of recreate those parameters, and we put some booby traps in the red area, so if you go in the red area I can ensure your safety. And last thing, and we're still working on that, is really we have the ambition to bring several people at the same time in the simulation, but also bring several people of different area of expertise and have some interdisciplinary exchange and training. And so yeah, and we also create some key roles, so the medical director, the firefighting director, and so on. Obviously we had to create the poor victims in our thing, so this is a 2D representation of the skin that is wrapped around the 3D model. And so we just found some nice pictures on Google Image and photoshopped some wounds onto the texture, started to create a library of virtual victims. Also each victim had some data attached with the right answer in terms of triage, description of the wounds and so on. And we obviously also needed to give the user interface to kind of take some decision, and so it started like this, then it kind of evolved, and now we're working on another, so some buttons allowing the perception, the evaluation, and some other buttons for actions, for interventions. So we have different scenarios, and all this was built within the software Unity, where you put your models, your code, your script. And this is what it looks like when you put everything together. So here's the virtual hands. So put them in blue because technically they should wear gloves during the intervention. And so, as I said, they need to go towards the victim, take the vital parameters like respiratory rate or breathing, or whether they are conscious, and depending, they have to make the choice on the start system. And then, okay, that person is being triaged. Does that person walk? Yes. Okay, that's yellow. And so here it's the first application we created. And as you can see, you can use lasers to really help the person to point. Or here we can also do the pressing with the finger, so we keep both of thing, because some people like to go like this and some people like to shoot with lasers, and so it's always trying to adapt to what your user gives you as feedback. And something very important is also the evacuation of the victim. So how do you evacuate first towards the advanced medical post and so on. So this is just a small example, and so as I said, trying different scenario. We wanted to create a nightclub because we did not have scenarios during the night. We wanted the scenario more complicated emotionally, so happening in a school, and so on and so on. And what we realized, in fact, is this first application we create could be kind of reuse the same logics, but targeting different skills. So, for example, here we created a virtual pulse oximeter, taking the blood oxygen saturation level and allowing you to decide, okay, how much oxygen should I provide to that patient to improve the blood oxygen level that is measured by that virtual blood pulse oximeter. We also created some first aid tools, and list goes on and on. Last year we launched ourselves in the creation of a driving simulator. We also created a virtual fMRI to help patients that have the phobia of going through those scanning procedures. And so what's very powerful is also the capacity of creating a digital clone of the real place. And so this is work we did with the Citadel Hospital of Liège, trying to create a virtual version of the trauma center, trying to create the digital version of the machine so they can do some actions to really influence the state of the virtual victims we create, and so on. So it's still a work in progress. But in conclusion, our mission, I think in the company we try to create and is really the virtual awakening and try to really give an idea of the potential of those technologies in a lot of domain. And I hope I give you some awakening about the potential of VR. I'd like to thank Wallonia, who funded me for the past almost 4 years, and the committee around the big boss above me, kind of, but most of all, really thank the different student colleagues that really helped me in those different projects and trying to bring those experiences to life. And it's true, we have quite a lot of fun in the team. And of course, I thank you all for your attention, and I'll be very glad to answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Stéphane. I'm coming in front. There's a possibility to ask questions, either physical or online.
Yes.
Most of the virtual reality focuses on what you see and what you hear. I was wondering if there was also an evolution, let's say more wearables, triggering a kind of sensory warning on your arm instead of just visual and auditive.
So it's true that visual.
Otherwise, the online persons can. So
Okay.
if you can repeat the question,
Yeah.
maybe in short, before
So
you
you're
answer.
asking, okay, visual and audio is quite well developed, but what about other senses, especially touching and so smell has been developed quite a lot, in the sense that there's either smell diffusers in the room. So you enter in a virtual cave and then you have this moisture. So some gaming industry use that to really focus. Some others, so there is I did not show haptic gloves and so on, but Facebook, Meta is working on a special glove with kind of air bubbles that can inflate and deflate to try to give you the illusion of touch, or with some vibration. But it's still a work in progress. And I think a very good use is using mixed reality. So if you want the person to be able to grasp the object, then why not tracking a real object and put the virtual object at the same place, in the sense that then you really hold the object and you have this physical return. Because if you go like this in VR, you just pass through everything because everything is virtual. So it's true that doing this mixed with physical and virtual at the same place allows you to have this sense of touch. So for the moment it's quite exploratory, but there is some solution existing. I know also some people using some heat lamps. So you have a virtual torchlight, and then you can feel the heat of the fire because they made it so it coincide. Also used some vibrating floors, this kind of stuff.
Interesting. I was thinking more for blind people, if they cannot see, then maybe they can be warned in another way, so that they could move around in the real world.
I have a small
You have.
slide maybe that can show the glove Facebook is working on at the moment. Let me just that's a course I gave yesterday. But to me, the touch is really the hardest, because we have such a precise sense, but they also do some complete suit with temperature control or measuring heart rate and so on. And this is kind of the last work going towards that, is the VR gloves Meta. Oof. This was unexpected. Normally I have ad block, so this doesn't happen usually, but and so this is the glove Facebook is working on, and it does hand tracking, but it also try to simulate the sense of touch, and so again removing the controllers and having some vibration stuff, but it's a work in progress, and so I think sometimes tracking a real object can also really be of great interest. But for blind people, I think that, yeah, I'm not sure we are yet in a device that are sufficiently precise, but the audio and the spatialization of audio is quite well advanced in those simulations. So yeah.
Other questions? I also see no questions coming in the chat room. Okay. Thank you very much, Stéphane.
With pleasure.
One moment before you go.
Wonderful.
We have a small token of appreciation for doing the keynote. It's a very regional sweater of our bachelor program, and you're now officially part of the applied scientist community. Thank you very much.
I'll try to give the honor back to the sweater.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If it doesn't fit, you can send me a mail, and then I will arrange with Stephanie and Aurélien that you get the right size. I had to make a guess, so...
Yeah, you're not far from...
okay,
from
super.
no, perfect.
Super. Thank you very much. For everybody here and online, we're going to have a short break.